It's a privilege and an honor to spend a few moments with the legendary coach, Greg Jackson. Thank you for taking the time, Greg, to speak with World Fight Products on location at Ray Wood's World Class Conditioning in Pickering, Ontario. You're an elite MMA coach. You work with some amazing MMA fighters, including John Bones Jones, GSP, Carlos Condit, Nate Marquardt, Clay Guida, at your facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And you've had some amazing successes. Where did it all start for you?
It all started for me in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I actually never wanted to be a mixed martial arts coach at all. They talked me into it. I was all about self-defense, and my students decided that this was probably in the early 90s that they wanted to try some of the no-holds-barred tournaments and some of the grappling stuff. So they persisted in talking me into it, and I started coaching, and we started winning, and now here I am today, however many years later.
That's excellent. What sort of characteristics have you seen with your years of experience that are the highlights, or sort of highlight for you whether or not a fighter is going to achieve great success?
You know, it's how a fighter deals with success much more than how they deal with failure that I think is one of the kind of standards that I judge how well somebody is going to do. And what I mean by that is when I see them get even success on a small scale, if they stay humble, if they keep their head, if they don't start telling me how to do stuff, I know they're going to be successful. So how they deal with success, that test is a real test of a fighter for me.
I've just witnessed you doing an awesome seminar here at the MMA Conditioning Specialist Shop in Pickering, Ontario. So I know the answer to this already, but for fighters starting out, would you recommend that they focus on BJJ or wrestling, or would you suggest a more rounded approach? What do you think?
I definitely suggest if you're going to start fighting to take a very rounded approach. Making sure that you got your wrestling, making sure that your kickboxing is there, and your jiu-jitsu is it's basically imperative now. You can't be a specialist the way you used to be. You have to be well-rounded. That's just the future of the sport. So if you want to get into the sport, get well-rounded.
What are your thoughts on the current 10-point must system?
The 10-point must system, I feel, is fine. To me, it's much more about the education level of the judges than it is about the if it's a half a point or a full point. If you're getting the same judges awarding half a points here and points there, you're still going to end up with the decisions that you might not agree with. So it's going to be an education level on the judges, and then you can put in whatever system you want as long as they know what they're looking at.
And what are your thoughts on going to 5 rounds now for non-title fights?
5 rounds for non-title fights for me is just the structure. So if you change the structure, I'll play with that structure. If you keep this, it's all the same to me. It's just another math problem. So it doesn't matter too much. I just have to do things a little bit differently for those main events than much more like a world championship fight. Since I had a lot of experience with those 5-round training camps, it's not a big deal.
And growing up, did you have a fighter yourself that you sort of looked up to, whether at MMA or boxing?
I actually had street fighters that I looked up to when I was a kid.
Really?
So yeah, I had a few of them that were incredibly tough individuals, and I was lucky enough to learn a little from them. But yeah, I was never really into competition. You know, I admired people like Mike Tyson and stuff, but that was a sport, and I was much more into keeping myself safe. So
I'm just going to read out a few names. If you could just give me a quick sentence back at me. John Bones Jones.
John Bones Jones, creative and incredibly intelligent.
GSP.
The exact same 2 things. In addition, both of those guys are great human beings. Holy cow.
What about Dana White?
Dana White is my hero because before him, we were all making about 5 cents, and I thought I'd be training fighters in a shack somewhere, and he made it possible for all of us to make a living, so he's my hero.
What about the Diaz brothers?
Good friends, and I love them to death. They're pure rock and roll. Like they don't care what you think about them. They don't care what you do. They're there to play rock and roll. So yeah, I love them.
Nate Marquardt.
Nate Marquardt is one of my oldest friends and one of the most talented fighters I've ever trained.
And Diego Sanchez.
Diego Sanchez is crazy in every good sense of that word, and he's such a loyal guy. And yeah, you can't say enough good things about him. But crazy in a good way.
GSP versus Carlos Condit is slated for early spring now due to George being injured. That was some of the predictions anyway, but maybe that will change soon. You've worked with both, and of course I'm not going to ask you about weaknesses or strengths of both fighters. But how do you keep them separated? What I mean is not just mentally, but how do you keep them separated? Do you have separate coaches? Because, thinking back, you must have seen that this is a potential fight moving forwards.
Yeah, we have protocols now when teammates fight each other, so having certain coaches in certain locations we have a big team, and it makes it pretty easy. You know, we've got here in Canada, you've got some of the best coaches in the entire world, headed by Firas Zahabi, who's one of my best friends and an amazing guy. And then in Albuquerque, you've got amazing coaches down there as well, headed by Mike Winklejohn, who's basically my mentor and big brother. So you've got all these amazing guys that are much better coaches than I am. So they'll be able to take care of business, and I'll step out.
You've recently come out with another book, Jackson's MMA, The Ground Game. How did that come about? You're working with Kelly Krieger.
Yeah, the book was a follow-up to the stand-up game, which covered basic wrestling and the basic strikes. This covers a lot of the basic ground fighting stuff, and it's just not only for fighters, but for fans that just like to watch the sports. You can be a little more educated as to why people are doing what they're doing, how they're doing it, and so it'll make watching it a lot more enjoyable as well.
As a true fight fan, how can we see and watch MMA from Jackson's MMA series in Canada?
You can get on the computer, and my gym manager's going to kill me right now because I don't remember the website, but you can get on the computer.
Jacksons.tv?
It's Jacksons.tv. You get on that thing, and you can watch all the up-and-coming fighters. So many of those guys have already been, now a lot of them are on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. We got 2 guys in there. So you're just going to see all the best young up-and-coming guys, even like the Sengoku World Champions fighting in it this weekend. So you're going to find a lot of good talent and a lot of good up-and-coming talent.
And that was one of my last questions. Is anybody we should be looking at on the horizon? Is there somebody coming up that you think, wow?
Holy cow, there's so many of them right now. If I name 2 or 3 of them, then I'm going to have a gym of 6 or 7 of them ready to kill me when I come home. But watch the Jackson's MMA series, and you'll see a bunch of them. Well,
thank you very much for taking the time, Greg. We appreciate the answers. Jackson's MMA website is www.jackson.tv. And thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
I'm glad you knew the website. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cheers.